Michelle,
Daniel,
OG Rose.
And today we're going to be talking about the mountain and the roller coaster, which is a helpful image. Wonderful conversation with Michelle Rivera and Sandy recently on dating on Rivera's channel, and an image that came up was that Michelle's been working on elaborating, thinking about, that I think is very helpful and useful, is comparing a mountain and a roller coaster, which, both give you heights, both give you lows, but they're not the same.
Yeah, so I guess that the initial image came up when I was thinking about relationships in general. And just about, there's so much oscillation of emotions that we can feel in relationships. And I was thinking about that, like when you're like desperate to hear back from somebody, or, you're thinking about how it is when engaging with somebody and how it makes you feel when you talk with them afterwards. Are you wondering like, oh my gosh, did they understand me? And I was thinking about like, what is it that could maybe help make that engagement less rapid in that oscillation, less volatile. And so I was thinking about this, and what came to mind is the difference between a roller coaster and a mountain. Because in a roller coaster, the oscillations, which life is full of oscillation,
right.
The very sounds we speak are sound waves. The light that we encounter is light waves. This is really important because we're energetic beings as well.
Right.
But the point is, a roller coaster has very rapid oscillations, has very rapid heights, depths, loops, turns, revolutions, right? Whereas the mountain presents extraordinary heights, extraordinary depths, but there's so much more of a lengthy procession and progression and process. And so I thought to myself that perhaps this could be a good analogy, right? A good comparison, because as fun as a roller coaster can be, personally, I think that the emotional turmoil it can put you in is exhausting. And I think I would much prefer, if I had to choose between the two, something that feels like I've got my 2 feet on the ground at least.
Oh, sure.
And something that also feels like it has like a greater journey to it, that has a greater trajectory, right? And so there's more of it being like I'm getting to do something and build something instead of something's just being done to me.
Well, yeah. The idea of a roller coaster is where you just sit down and someone else presses the button, and there you go. You're having fun and you're carried away.
Yes.
Whereas a mountain, you might have to do training. It will take time, especially if it was a multi-day mountain.
Yes.
And it kind of struck me a mountain range.
Sure.
And the point you just made, that mountains are much higher than roller coasters. That's kind of interesting because it's not necessarily an equilibrium, a parallelism where a roller coaster goes high but doesn't go as high as a mountain. You can go to greater heights on a mountain, but it's harder to get up there. But there also is something about a mountain where you can stop and stand still, but on a roller coaster you can't stand still because the emotions are carrying you, the culture is carrying you. And it's an interesting metaphoric structure because it works very well in dating. And it also works very well to just think about life too. Like, what are you using your free time for? Are you using your free time to find a roller coaster to ride, or are you using your free time to learn how to climb a mountain? What about your business? Is your business something where or your job or your work, is it a roller coaster or is it a mountain? Are you just going at your job in order to get status and you're being carried away by the pressures of society, and you're not really asserting your agency at all? You're just getting carried. Whereas a mountain, you have to do the work. You have to build, and you have to climb and go higher. But like you say, there's a stability to it. But a roller coaster is fun. It's fun.
Yeah, and I think the thing is that the other thing too about a roller coaster versus a mountain is like you don't always go to a theme park. You know, it's very once in a while. Now maybe it's like your main hobby or something, you know, or maybe it's like you're a connoisseur of like theme parks or something like that. But on the whole, you know, you might go like once every few years or something like that. Or maybe once in your life. I don't know. Whereas a mountain, or even just like a nearby hilltop or something, some type of natural creation that's there is always available to you. And pretty much you decide if you go and climb it or embark on that. Yeah, like it's kind of like when we talked, Daniel, about how it's your, you know, when you think about your daily life, it's a lot of times it's those little things that just make the most of your memories. Like you remember the excursions and those are fun, but if you think about what really made the bulk of, like, say, your childhood, it's those little things. It's a daily day in, day out
doing it again
types of things that build up your childhood that often were the simple things, right? Like they didn't take necessarily like a lot of money or a lot of externalities. It was a lot of times just kind of running around the farm with the cousins or something like that. So that's the same there too, because again, the theme park is kind of this exceptionalism. There's an exceptional time to it in terms of how the frequency you'll be able to go to it, whereas the mountain's always there. And I think that gets, like, I think then we can lose sight of the actually, I almost want to say like capital E exceptionalism of the mountaintop experience, because it's more work, right?
Well, you're always trying to get back to the theme park, and
you always want the kind of very novel, perhaps,
and
type of
easy,
experience,
because you just sit down. Well, if your standard of a good date, if we stick to that topic, is a roller coaster, then you're always looking to be doing something that's atypical, that you don't normally do. But then you get married, and if you've trained yourself to always be thinking about relationships as roller coasters, and now you're in a scenario where the name of the game is a mountain, well, you've got a mismatch of the metaphor. And so it's not going to feel like the roller coaster anymore. It's not going to work like the roller coaster. It's going to be an entirely different thing. Well, you're going to think you're doing something wrong then. You're going to think something is wrong, because now you're suddenly faced with a mountain when you've been trained and habituated to thinking you're going to be on a roller coaster. And so then people get upset. They think there's something wrong. And then it's really hard. Well, you know, if you're a roller coaster is not hard. You have to do no training, no work to ride a roller coaster. You sit down, and you've been led in your kind of romantic cultural thinking to think of love as a roller coaster. You're just you fall in love. You're swept off your feet. You know, there's so much metaphoric structure that you're just taken away. You're just taken, but marriage is more like a mountain. But like you say, at the top of the mountain, you can see heights that a roller coaster couldn't even dream of. And you can transform yourself in the journey of climbing the mountain in ways that a roller coaster will never transform you. Can riding a roller coaster ever make you stronger? No. But like climbing a mountain could make you stronger.
Well, I was going to say, like, you're physically going to get stronger too. And also, you know, it's funny, though I do think the mountaintop is a very great symbol just in and of itself. But think about just all the sights you see along the way on a mountain.
Right.
The flora and fauna, the sounds of the birds,
right.
the wind,
That's right.
Just so many things that you see, the rock faces and such that you experience on your way.
That's right.
There's so much there, and there's, I mean, probably an infinite amount of ways to climb a mountain.
Yeah,
right.
That's right.
And
but
to
a roller
ascend a
coaster
mountain
is a track.
And climb it again.
You know, a roller coaster is a track.
Yeah, roller coaster is a track, and that's, you know, I think is a great conversation with Javier and Sandy, and a lot of times the modern dating has fallen into scripts, right?
Yes.
Which a lot of modern life has. It's I mean, maybe it's not so new to humanity to fall into scripts, but there's
the
more
existential
images.
pressure, right? You have like a
There's
cookie
more
cut. You know
images.
what to do. You don't have to decide. You know, there's something about scripts that is natural to produce.
Well, it's natural because it's safer.
It's safer,
right? Feels safe, and that's where I bring up about, you know, the roller
safety
coaster
line.
gives. You know, the roller coaster is about doing the loops and the drops, but you get your safety belts.
Yeah.
You have your safety belt and the bar, and you know, it's interesting in that way too, because there's actually this real sense of like, you both want something thrilling, but you also want the security of what that thrill exactly is, and having the security of a seatbelt, you know, and we get so fixated on our images and notions instead of really engaging with a real human being who's ever changing, who's ever growing, developing just like you are. And I mean, the thing is, that's why the mountain, well, you are going to be changing, you know, you're going to be sweating, you're going to be,
sure, you know, and the abilities and the capabilities and the nature of the person you're climbing the mountain with really matter, and you're going to focus on that, and you're going to try to bring out the best in them so they can make it to the summit. On a roller coaster, it don't matter what their personality is, it doesn't matter what their interests are or hobbies, it doesn't matter how they spend their time. The roller coaster takes them, they have a good time, it does all the work. So everything about who the person is, what their values are, etc., so don't matter on a roller coaster. Easily could matter on a mountain, because you could give up, you could sit down, you could not have done the training to be ready, you may not have packed your bag well, you know, the person may not be encouraging. Do you want to climb a mountain with someone who's not encouraging? No, because you won't make it. So the personality and character of the person you're with on the mountain and yourself really matter on a mountain. Well, on a roller coaster, it don't matter at all.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no, you're not on a roller coaster to talk, really. I mean, you're just there to scream. You could. You're there to scream.
Yeah, there to scream.
Or mumble to your twin sister, like, I hope we don't die, I hope we don't die. But it's funny, two things came to mind. One, you had mentioned that great point about how the roller coaster also ends where it starts.
Yeah, where it starts.
It ends exactly where it started.
Yeah.
And I think that's also very interesting and reflective of the relationships that have these very high speed oscillations, you know, really high, really low. Oh my gosh, if I don't hear back from them, I'm just gonna have a miserable day, you know. I'm gonna question every single thing about myself, you know, pretty much.
Yeah, sure.
And then it's like, it's just so weighty, you know. And that can feel like, that can be the illusion of progression, and of like something like you're taking stock in. But really, you just end up exactly where you end up exactly where you started.
Well,
you know,
I mean, it's a thrill. There's a lot of emotion, but you don't make progress. And that's what so much the dating and the culture does. You have a thrill, and then, you know, you come home and nothing changed.
What next?
Or
nothing changed. Yeah, and I mean, the other things. One, you were saying how, like, you didn't have to do anything to ride a roller coaster. Well, if you're Michelle, you'd have to get over your fear of heights. Though I do enjoy some roller coasters. I'll preface that with some.
Sure.
But I guess what I meant to say, that's interesting too, though, right? Because a lot of times people are like, just, you know, get over your fears. Just go out there and have fun, have an experience, you know, in dating. Where it's like, well, just you're being afraid of commitment. You should just go out and have fun.
Right.
And I think there is something. I mean, you have to really be self-skeptical. Like, are you not going on that date because you're just afraid to ever have human contact with someone you could maybe love or something? But the thing is that it gives the illusion like you did really do something big, like in doing the roller coaster, because, you know, you got over your fears.
Yeah.
But really, like, you were...
It's a level one. It's like a level one.
Like, you were literally strapped in. They can't put you on something that you actually get hurt in. Otherwise, they would, like, get in trouble. The roller coaster people would get in trouble. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's an example of facing a fear, but there's not training. There's not diligence. There's not endurance. There's not, like, dedication to getting the ability to climb. And you can face your fear of dying on a mountain. You know, you can face
I just think that's interesting and important, because I think a lot of times if the only standard is, like, you're getting over your fear, well, it's just too simplified. Like, I think it's just, we have to get into the nuance of that. Like, first level fears, second level fears, third level fears.
Well, that gets into fear versus wisdom.
And then fear versus wisdom.
I mean, that's
hard.
Topic. That's a huge topic.
That's really hard to discern.
If there's a poisonous snake on the road, I'm just like, well, just pick it up. Don't be afraid. It's like, well, that's stupid. It will bite you. You know, and you have face your fear. It's like, face your fear, get on the road. But if you... The progress, let's put it this way, the progress came maybe from the first time you overcame your fear on the roller coaster and got on, but what about the second time? Well, you've already learned to face your fear.
Now you're like, let's do it again, that was fun. Like, you know,
so maybe the first time you go on a date, even if it's just a high emotional thing, maybe there's a progress there, because
getting
you were
out of your comfort zone or something.
Maybe the first time. But if that's all it ever then is, you know, redoing the high emotion situations and going with people, well, then you're not taking it to those deeper levels. So maybe the roller coaster can be a first step, you know, but then you need to go to the mountain. You know, you need to have more mental models. You have to have more steps in your arsenal. But mostly people do the roller coaster and stay on the roller coaster, and that's it.
Yeah, and like there are revolutions on roller coasters,
Sure.
and Javier's title with the dating revolution.
Sure.
I think that's such a great concept. The thing is that the roller coaster gives you, again, there's a lot of illusion of revolutionary,
movement
movement
different
in dating, but the real revolution is in you.
Yes.
The real revolution happens inside of yourself, and that's what happens on your mountain journey.
Yes.
Yes.
It can't happen really on a roller coaster, except maybe that first time when you face the fear, because you're
Exactly.
just sitting there.
And
You're receiving a thrill.
Right.
You don't have to change inside to create anything inside
Yeah.
of you, to
Yeah.
cultivate emotion. You are receiving a thrill from the
Exactly.
environment. And the danger, always the word revolution is so funny
I
because
know.
it's a circle.
I know.
You return where you said you go in a complete circle and you didn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
So, how do you
A
have...
full revolution is a 360.
Yeah, so you don't go
right?
anywhere, right? So how do you have a revolution that's not just a 360?
Yeah.
Right? Well, you have to you have to enter a vertical dimension and stay up there. That would be a mountain.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's a great point. Also, too, I think people are like, well, are we like completely vilifying the thrill type of
No, you're just
oscillations
saying if that's
and
it.
roller coasters? Right. It's like, no. And the thing is, let's take in like a marriage example, long-term partnership. There are going to be the roller coasters in that, in intimacy, sexuality, in the moments of
Yes.
life. There's going to be a lot of the thrill. But the thing is that it can't, if the focus of the relationship is only on the thrill, only on the
Yes.
let's do this ride,
Yes.
and it's kind of done to
Yes.
you, and it's
Yes,
this,
yes.
then that's not going to sustain you through the actual life, the actual stuff of life, which is this daily,
Because there's no
the
interchange.
daily.
The world, a life of thrills is a life of the world doing the work for you, giving you the thrill.
Yes.
All you do
Yes.
is receive and consume.
Yes.
Basically.
And there's a place for that.
Sure, of course.
Can't be the only thing though, because
No, and it's not bad at all. Basically, everything, for Augustine, all evils are misordered goods.
Right.
That means that nothing that exists is evil if it's just ordered right.
Yes.
Roller coasters are great if ordered right. Thrills are ordered right. And there's something about the human mind that really struggles with that. Because they
Yes.
think if you're saying it has to be ordered, they think you're saying it's bad.
Exactly.
But basically, food, if your relationship to food is disordered, you become a glutton. Food is good. If your relationship to sex is disordered, it enters lust, to et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Everything that exists is good if rightly ordered, if our orientation toward it is right. The problem is when you have all of the cultural scripts and pressures and emotions that leads you to living your life on a roller coaster. And that's what people try to do. They try to live their life on a roller coaster. And what would happen if you literally lived on a roller coaster? You would get sick. You'd be dizzy.
You get very, very
You
sick.
would get sick.
Oh, and I love that. I love that you brought that up. Because, so much of the more kind of this modern dating is very, very caustic, very, like I said, volatile.
Yes.
And then it's like, you literally, there's this whole idea of being lovesick, which I think any human can resonate with. But it's like, you're sick.
Yeah, you're sick.
Just like you can throw up after going on a roller coaster.
I
And
mean,
it's
imagine like getting
Yeah.
on a roller coaster and trying to squat down and make a little tent down on the roller coaster and stay on it. It would be sad.
the tiniest little...
But you could literally make a tent on a mountain and be great. You
Yeah,
could literally
yeah.
set a tent up on a mountain.
You
and
can
be-
actually live
on a mountain.
There's a thought.
Yeah, you
and
can.
that's the thing. Like, love is so... It's so... this modern dating form of love...
Yes.
There's really... It's interesting because it's really not allowing for the living.
No, the living is in the way of the thrills. Living...
And then you kind of like... You're really just kind of stuck on the lifeline of the thrills. That's like the only way you're living for that.
Well, then you got the epidemic of boredom.
Instead of living for like living itself.
Well,
Right.
if I were to say, oh, well, the mountain is in the way of the summit, you'd look at me funny. It's like the only way to the summit is the mountain. But really, if I were to say, oh, my job is in the way of the roller coaster, that makes sense to people. They say, yeah, it is, right? So if your metaphoric structure is for thrills as opposed to getting to a summit, then yeah, lots of stuff is in the way of your thrills. So you're trying to get through them. You're sitting around. Your life is defined by waiting.
Well, that's the thing, too, with waiting. Because the thing is, it's always like, you can't just embark.
No, you don't have
for
to.
roller coasters. You have to wait till it opens. Do you have the money to buy the tickets?
Yes,
Is the ride open? You have to wait in line. There's so much waiting.
Wait till you get off of work. Wait till the next day when you can go. Wait till it's open. No one has ever climbed to the top of a mountain by waiting for the summit to come to them. There is no way to climb a mountain by
There's
waiting.
no way to pay for climbing a mountain.
No. No. I mean, the waiting
for actually climbing it with your 2 feet.
There is a ton of waiting, and therefore, getting, like, killing time. Life becomes about killing time, getting through time, like passing time, passing all this language, because life is defined by waiting. Yeah. Time is in the, you're trying to get rid of time. But if you're like trying to climb a mountain, like I've, in climbing mountains, I can tell you there's no time to waste. The sun is setting. We got to get to the top of the mountain. The time, every minute counts because a storm is coming. We have to move. And now if it's a multi-day, you have to get to a certain rest area where you can set up your tent and then you can sleep there. Time is not something you want to pass. You need time. Time has a in a sense, time is redeemed on the mountain. Time matters. You want time so you can get to the summit and get to your rest points and get to your certain locations and so on and so forth. But when it comes to the roller coaster, time is you're just trying to kill it. You're just trying to kill time so you can get your thrill. And so your disposition to your life is profoundly shaped by your relationship to time. Yeah. Profoundly shaped by your relationship to time. And if time is something you're always trying to kill or you're always trying to get through, then your life is going to be lacking. Your life will be sad. But if time is something like, I need more of it. I want more of it. I want an abundance of time. Yes. Well, that suggests a goodness to time, unless it's like stress with a deadline or whatever. But other than that obvious example of, that's different. But even there's kind of a negative relationship to time because it's running away from you. It's like you're running out of it and you're going to get in trouble. But when you like have a joyful disposition to life because you feel like you're on an adventure and you're climbing a mountain, you want more time from a positive place, from an abundance, from time is good. Yeah. Time is good. Like, ask yourself the question, do I think time is good or do I think time is bad? How do I relate to time? And if you like time is bad, then you're probably living a roller coaster life. Yeah. But if you say time is good, then you're probably living a life seeking a mountaintop. Yeah.
And isn't that funny because some of the most like acclaimed roller coasters are like lightning ball. Yeah, it's fast. It's like
they don't last.
The fast ones are the ones that get all the rave,
Oh yeah. Well, this is the joke. I mean, people sit around waiting for events that last an hour, and then they spend the rest of the week waiting for the next weekend. Right. They don't last.
And this is why I think there's something very like there's something, the explosive nature of roller coasters, the speed, all of that is, again, there's something very like climactic about that, but then it's done.
It's done.
So, and that was a good experience, but if you made that all of your life, like, what are you just going to be speeding around through life? You would never have any relationships at all. But the very reason why you want that type of roller coaster is for what you think is this idea of modern dating, this idea of like the fun of the relationship. This is what you should be doing. Yes. And I just think that's really interesting with this idea of time, because a lot of times it's the speed, which means you're kind of like just jettisoning yourself through time really fast. You can kind of just that's what it's all about. Actually, that's kind of like what makes the thrill. Yes. The thrill.
Well, is life something you're trying to get through, or is life something you want more of? Yeah. And if life is just something you're trying to get through, we have that poem or the phrase where you say your opponent is time. And what that phrase means is that you've got to figure out how to live your life in a way so that time does not become something you're just trying to get through. Yeah. And time is a heck of an opponent, because the day you have to do the dishes again, the doing it again, you're maintaining relationships. Time wears you out, like the Ozymandias poem. So, there's a way in which time is a heck of an opponent. It's very, very hard, and all of us ultimately die. In a sense, we all lose to time. But, a great athlete will tell you that when you face a good opponent, you actually come to enjoy it. Like, it becomes a thrill. It becomes wonderful. Like, the facing of time, just like climbing a mountain. There actually is a thrill in climbing the mountain. It's not an either or, but it's a thrill that only comes from, it's a thrill that is only there for the one who will take the challenge of the mountain, who will take the challenge of the opponent, and who trained accordingly, who did the work so that they could rise up to the occasion. So likewise, so much of philosophical work is rising up to the occasion to face the opponent of time, to turn that opponent into something you enjoy, to turn it into something thrilling and something that you find an abundance in. And then once you've learned how to overcome time becomes something that you look forward to. Time becomes something that's abundant. The dimension of time that weighs down on you turns into it turns into something positive. It turns into something wonderful, as opposed to like this water, as opposed to this wave that's trying to hit you and drown you. It becomes something you surf and that you enjoy, to bring in another metaphor.
Yeah, and where does time, the concept of the, time in terms of our quantifying it, is really by the sun.
Yes.
Right? And if you think about the sun, it sets and rises every day. Well, it also moves because of the seasons and the, the basically the orientation, the axis of the earth. So it's really, if you think about, if you map out what the sun's doing as the earth spins, it's a wave.
Ah, yes.
It literally is a
up and down,
up and down, up and down, up and down, and it moves because the earth is moving, tilt because it's a tilt. And so I was just thinking about that today. I was like, it's actually like literally a sine wave or whatever. It's actually making that pattern as well. And I think the thing is that the other thing with roller coasters versus the mountain climbing, it's like the roller coaster has a lot of artificial lights, a lot of artificial sound. It can be really fun, but it's also very distracting.
Yeah, and I mean, with the flashing lights, someone else has made them, right? And they're almost hyper-real, to use that Baudrillard term.
Yeah.
They're like intentionally colorful, intentionally bright. You don't find these things in nature. You don't find these things doing your dishes in the kitchen. There's a hyper-reality, as Baudrillard said. He has that famous part where he goes to Disneyland and people are like, so what do you think? And he's like, oh, it's great. It's it's better than reality. And he's kind of like, he's talking about the hyperreal, and he's kind of concerned about this because one, he wants to say the real is dead. There's no longer any reality, so we can't even tell what's fake and true anymore. They've been mixed like milk and dye. But he also wants to say that we get very habituated to the hyperreal. Like it becomes our standard of right and wrong, of how things should be and how things shouldn't be.
Yes.
And I think that happens in dating. Like in the roller coaster makes life, like if you moralize the roller coaster, because that's the other thing people do, like they moralize it, like you should be on a roller coaster, you shouldn't have to work, you shouldn't have to do these things, you should just be able to sit back and because you've done so much, enjoy the ride,
enjoy the flashing lights.
So there's a moralization of the hyperreal, which, like a mountain, isn't hyperreal. There's sweating and it's tough, and much of life, just getting through things, is not hyperreal. And if you're looking and living for the hyperreal, then your relationship to time is going to be trying to kill it, trying to get through it to get to hyperreal things. To try to get to those events that make life, feel hyperreal. So you're looking for those flashing lights and those colors and different things.
Yeah, and it reminds me too of like how a lot of times dating, in more of like in the image sense of it, can be like flashy, right? The flashy dates or whatever. And now, yes, you can have dates where you just sort of like stay at home and watch Netflix, I guess.
Sure.
But
then Netflix is supposed to be flashy. The show is supposed to be flashy. There's this expectation of some sort of thrill.
Yeah, exactly. Some sort of external light.
Yes.
And there's again, there's nothing necessarily wrong with the man-made light that somebody's somebody took the time to make that. Okay, so they took the time to
and
make
it is indeed fun. There are indeed neat things on Netflix. There are amazing shows. The issue is moralization.
The moralization, and then also the expectations, right?
The expectation,
where that's it. Like that's it. So then when you have actual real life where there's not the flashy lights, right? If we compare that more to the mountain climbing, you're like, this is the thing. You start to think, what's wrong with me?
Yeah, that's right. The moral
or what's
system.
wrong with him or her that you're with?
That's right.
If you're thinking about a dating or type of like relationship, and it's like, oh no. This is just part of it. It's part of it to have the night. It's part of it to have the day.
Yes.
So there are times when it's dark. There are times when it's light, and so I think it's just important because the light can also be a symbol too for the light of your own vision,
Sure.
And I think that can sometimes just get completely lost when there's so many, in this analogy of the roller coaster, with all these lights of all the other people's visions of how things should be versus your own inner light of vision for what things, what you're striving toward, right?
There tends to be kind of in people's thinking this idea, the roller coaster is the fun and the mountain is the hard. But there's kind of this idea that the people who do the mountain understand that actually your enjoyment of the roller coaster or those fun times actually goes up if you've been putting in the work, if you're not running to them as an escapism, if you don't have an expectation. Like imagine that you never exercised, you just rode a roller coaster. like be out of shape, you'd feel bad, you wouldn't have any energy levels, you might get a heart attack or something like that. So actually your ability to like get on a roller coaster and enjoy it, you have to be alive to do that. You have to feel energetic, you have to feel up to things, and the mountain can train you to do that. So like that's kind of the funny thing is like that again, that C.S. Lewis principle of first things first, second things also. If you put second things first, you lose both, but if you put first things first, you get second things also. Like we want to moralize the roller coaster, which actually then hurts our ability to even enjoy the roller coaster. Like when those things come, we don't enjoy them as much as we can, and yet the whole reason we moralize them is to enjoy them. And so there's this ontological, this irony that is at play that's very, very destructive, and it messes people's lives up.
And I mean, the mountain isn't just dark, right?
Sure.
The sun is our most spectacular light, and it creates so many ripple effects of light, right? Because even plants are basically containers for light, So there's just so much there. It's just that you have, and it's cool because like there's never the same sunset every night,
Sure.
And that's what's interesting, right? Like an artificial light is actually always the same.
Yeah.
Right?
Natural light's more different.
Yeah. Natural light actually has a lot more variation because you turn on that light, it's the same as it was the last time you turned it on. So it's something interesting about that.
Well, roller coasters. I mean, the Apollo's chariot at King's Dominion or whatever is the
Love
same.
That ride.
No,
I'm just kidding.
that
I don't
one
know
is great.
I don't know that ride.
That one actually is amazing. Like the day we were there, they were doing like they were trying to beat the world record for the most roller coaster rides. We got like 7 times. It was unbelievable.
Nice.
But it was the same every time. It didn't change. That's the thing. The man-made tracks don't change. They're the same.
Exactly.
If it's man-made, it's basically repetitive.
Yeah.
And almost has to be. Like every invention, almost by definition, has to have a repetitive function.
Yeah.
Whereas nature can surprise you. New things can show up. The weather can change the landscape. There can be new animals along the way. And like you say, on a mountain, you can go up a mountain many, many different ways.
Yes.
So it's much more new.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of plays out. Like if your life is kind of based on roller coasters, like boredom sets in, like a repetitiveness to life, because it's just another thrill. Like it actually loses. There is this kind of modernity.
There can be disillusionment that can set in, even in doing the thrill things, right?
Yes.
That the analogous to the analogy thrill things, because for some just sort of like you start to realize like, wait, this isn't really all that different. Then why am I doing this? And all of that.
Yes, and then you look for a bigger thrill. You have to find the bigger roller coaster, right? And you look for the next. So then you're always looking for, and then you don't enjoy the previous roller coaster. But so much of the mountain is learning how to like meditate in the moment, be in the moment. I was thinking about, so many of the Eastern teachings or practice are like the practice of washing dishes and washing them well, where you're not just trying to get through washing the dishes, but you're like actually washing the dishes in there. And there's something about the mountain that you're not just thinking about getting to the bigger mountain or the next mountain. You're in that experience, and you're there. I mean, you also get a reverence because it's like it's really hard to climb a mountain, and so I better not be quick to want to go to the next bigger mountain because I know what that requires of me. I'll let it come in its due time, in its right time.
Yes.
Whereas a roller coaster, since you didn't have to do anything but sit there, there's nothing holding you back from looking for the next one. So you can't satisfy yourself.
That's a great point. Yeah.
You can't satisfy yourself. You can't have a healthy judgment of when you should look for the next thing or when you shouldn't.
Yeah.
When you should look for the next roller coaster or not. With a mountain, it naturally helps you cultivate a ability to judge when you should look for the next mountain or the taller mountain. Whereas man-made things doesn't naturally create this ability to sort of judge when you should look for the next thing and when you should not.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And I was also thinking about how, we talked in the garage a little bit about this idea. It's funny because the roller coaster kind of also trains you in a way. Like, one of the most thrilling aspects of the roller coaster, is like you're like click, 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 click. It's like clicking to the top.
Anticipation.
And then, I mean, the whole point of why part of it, the ones that go up and down, are the whole fun of it, like the thrill of it, is the fall.
Oh, yeah.
Is the decline. Is the, and you get those funny pictures where like,
screaming.
Somebody's hand, And it's just like, that's very interesting because in this analogy, it almost, it gets you accustomed to actually enjoying almost the things that are drama, like if we compare the fall,
you expect them. It's like
what it's
the
like,
point.
that's like the point of it is is like the drama, and it's like that means it's tough, and this is real, like we're having a real relationship because it's hard, and like there's these ups and these downs, and like that's exactly how it's supposed to be. And it's kind of like, okay, that's what we've kind of known it to be in sort of mainstream modern dating. But the thing is, with the mountain, if you're gonna like have some avalanche like fall, like just down a mountainside, you're like, I could die.
Yeah, you'll die.
There's so much more of an in-touch reality with the fact that falls are not really something you should just kind of like play around with. Now, obviously,
you take them seriously.
Obviously, in life, you're going to have times on a roller coaster and have times on a mountaintop. But but the thing is, I think to have this kind of respect the power of falling and what that can mean. The main objective of the mountain is to climb it. It's like to ascend, not to descend.
Well, if you're trying to climb a mountain and you take everything personal and you're getting personally hurt, you're not going to make it to the top of the mountain and you're going to die on the side of it. So you kind of have this understand where today in drama, like taking things personally or being like kind of emotional stuff that's kind of expected and a sign that's healthy and that's good. Like the fear that you feel on a roller coaster is good. You're supposed to feel fear. That's kind of the thrill. So like negative emotions become positive.
Exactly.
But if you look at life as trying to climb a mountain, the negative emotions need to be sorted out. Like they're going to happen, but we have to
not actually.
You have to solve them.
Yeah, you have to figure out like actually how to be a good climber. Like how do you not fall? Because
I mean, there's going to be disagreement, but when you're climbing a mountain, the goal is to figure out how does this not happen again? Where almost if drama equals reality, if you figure out how to stop drama happening, then the reality of the relationship is gone. So there's this weird inverse incentive.
No more roller coasters. And
there's no more roller coasters.
So I want the ride.
Yeah, so no one would say this if you asked them directly, but subconsciously or at least socially, there is a perverse incentive for there to be drama so that there is reality, which frankly you can only kind of develop that way of thinking in the context of comfort, like middle class suburbia life, like kind of like comfort is where you can kind of even let that perverse incentive develop, because if you're in a very serious situation where there are really high stakes, then that would obviously not be allowed. That would not be problematic because it may prove fatal. Right?
Sure.
So that's where it's actually, in a strange way though, it would actually then be healthy to see your situation in those terms, because then you wouldn't fall into the perverse incentives and you wouldn't fall into thinking that drama creates reality.
Right.
And that's where a mountain metaphor can be healthy, where if there's disagreement or if there's problems, we need to sort it out. And also too, the source of your problems becomes the mountain. Like the mountain, the terrain, it's externalized. Whereas on a roller coaster, if you're like, since the roller coaster is doing everything for you, you don't have to do any problems. So if you have problems, it must be something in you. It must be an internal, it must be a personal problem that's going on. So what ends up happening is the problems that people look for in relationships are personal problems, which those tend to develop when people have not figured things out. Maybe they haven't gained self-knowledge, maybe they haven't confronted their ego, maybe they haven't done that psychological work they need to do with themselves and with other people, that if you overcome, then you can overcome your ego. But again, if drama equals reality, there is an incentive not to overcome your neuroses, not to overcome your psychological problems. But if your goal is to climb a mountain, then you must overcome your deficiencies, or else you won't make it to the top of the mountain. Right. And so again, it just creates a perverse incentive structure that really will get you into trouble.
Yeah, no, definitely, absolutely. And I was thinking a little bit about like this idea of overcoming your ego or different things like that. I mean, I think too, just it's a simple point, but the thing is that because there is the effort that has to go into climbing a mountain, I think if you think about life and relationships more in those terms, you do simply understand the layers, because I was listening to the that Freud reading group with Cadell and Eric, and it's basically like they were talking. There was a gentleman from Delhi who was talking about this very interesting point about how like there was an excavation point made by Eric, and then this gentleman from Delhi was talking about like maybe it's not just simply in like this kind of linear but depths thought, but like there's actually on the surface that we can see these layers, if you will, but it's on the surface. Yeah, I thought that was a really interesting point. Maybe think of like faces and how in Ayurvedic medicine, like there are people who can just look at somebody's face and they can understand like what's going on wrong in their body, things like that. Very, very interesting, and that probably has to do with like the fascia in the body, which is like the web basically that you know that actually holds all of these like memories. All of our physical things and emotional things actually are held in our bodies. So anyways, I just that's a whole kind of detour, but the point is that I was thinking about it, how a mountain, in some ways, if you're thinking about like the depths of your own experiences, right, possibly traumas, joys, different things, in a way, the fact that we can embrace life as a mountain climbing is actually to kind of like it's almost like to superficiate, but in a good sense, like to kind of extract and work on the things that are in the depth by going up the strata. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
In the earth terms, like there are strata that cause the mountains.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
yeah,
and
yeah,
so it's like
yeah,
that. There's some almost a way in which it's like, okay, we can embrace the fact that there is a constant like sort of layering that we're kind of working through as we climb our mountains. And that's just, all of that is completely missed if we think about life and relationships simply in terms of roller
Yeah, I mean, because I have this image now, like a roller coaster. It's like if up is progress and down is devolution. Well, roller coaster is like progress, devolution, progress, devolution. It's like, but a mountain is like progress. Like you climb, and you don't descend the mountain until you've achieved the goal, until the progress is like, boom, achieved.
Yes.
And then you descend. And there's a different rate of descent where you can absorb the progress and own the progress, where the thrill of a roller coaster comes and goes so quickly that you can't sustain it, that you can't absorb it into yourself. So you can't have those transformations.
Yeah, and also like just this idea of like kind of dealing with your own trauma or these things that are suppressed and possibly like depth underneath in this archaeological sense, but it's not like the tip of the iceberg, right? Like a lot of times people say, well, anger is actually the tip of the iceberg. There's something that's causing the person to have anger. So it's almost like to have the mountain is like to take, like if you just think about an image of an iceberg and just kind of like whoop, like lift it up, and now it's a mountain. And so to kind of this idea of like climbing mountains is like to allow yourself to kind of work through the things that you've actually been through in your life, to actually kind of give sort of a testimonial journey in that effort. And a lot of that's just kind of missed if we think about life in terms of this metaphor of the roller coaster. If we simply just think about it as sit down, put on your seatbelt, and we're off. I think there's just it just simply, to me, I feel like it's really is a distraction from dealing
the question
with those things.
there's a question you could almost ask kind of, under what circumstance do you think it's more likely that you're going to learn what a person is really like? On a roller coaster or when climbing a mountain? Like, under which circumstance is there a higher likelihood that you'll get an insight into what a person really is like? It's almost like a roller coaster, the emotion, it's like too intense to get any like real reading. Because it's like too much. But on a mountain, you start to see what they do when they're sweaty. You start to say, they're really nice, except when they're tired, right?
When the bugs are out.
Yeah, when the bugs are out. Well, you find out what a person is really like when the pressure is on. One of the other things that has gotten us in trouble is thinking that a person's true self is what they do when things are good. That's not a person's true self because you can't meaningfully define their self from their environment. It may just be the environment. Maybe they are a nice person when the environment is nice, but you can't get a clear reading because it could just be that they're stimulated by the nice environment to be nice. But when the environment is bad or when things are difficult, that's when you find out what a person is really, really like.
But don't you think that the person who's like, but see, that's what it's about, Daniel, because it's about this drama and this up and down and like, see, now you get to really see what people are like on this like this roller coaster.
Oh, sure, but there's no progress. There's no development. You're just returning to the same place.
There's no sweat. There's no muscles.
Is the reason you want to find out what people are like, and more importantly, what you are like, is to know if you need to make progress and what areas to make progress. Like it's a test, right? But the reason you have a test is how to improve. Like if you're like the test is the goal, that's kind of insane. The test is not the goal, or the test in of itself does not prove it doesn't prove that you've arrived, right? You on the mountain, you're testing yourself. But you're also progressing. On the roller coaster, you're just feeling thrills and seeing if you're afraid and different things, and then you're just arriving where you started, right? So, but this is the problem. It's like what happens there is that they're kind of mixing the metaphors, right?
That's what I think is happening.
Yeah.
Because it sounds like we're talking about, and they're like, no, but that's exactly what we're talking about. We're doing it too.
We're finding out the truth,
exactly.
Right? But finding out the truth of a person is not any good if it's not a map, if it's not an engine for positive development and positive change.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, like, that's the temptation of, like, not again, roller coasters are not bad. There's a place for them in our lives, because there's always going to be some sort of roller coasteristic type of element or moments in our lives, right? But the temptation is really there to just, it's like, it is so thrilling, it is so fun, and I think maybe one can take it as just like a vilification of fun, and that's not it at all. Thing is that you have to just understand that fun has a more actually amplified understanding, a bigger understanding than I think we sometimes give it. And it's like, no, there's so much more to it. And that's where I think the mountain can really expand that. And obviously, like we said, mountains are actually much, much higher than roller coasters.
Well,
they're much more expansive.
Well, fun doesn't stay fun if fun is all you have. If all you have is fun, it loses itself. Like when all you ever had was food wouldn't be so great, right? Like if you literally were eating 24/7, it wouldn't be that great,
or like
right?
all you had is food. You didn't have clothes.
You didn't have clothes, right?
You didn't have like a house. You just had food.
You just had food, right?
You make like a banana.
Yeah, life. Yeah, exactly. It's exactly right, right? Like when you say it that way, you're like, well, obviously you need a concert of variables, right? You need food and housing and clothes and friends. Food's pretty great, but likewise, fun only maintains its funness if it's in a concert of other dimensions of life, such as struggle, such as love, such as commitment, such as blah, blah, blah. If there's only fun, then fun stops being fun because it begins to feel cheap. Yeah. It begins to feel empty, and then it loses the fun. Like what we're talking about is actually how to keep fun, how to keep it. And yeah, like you're saying, it's just so much fun going on the roller coaster. Well, likewise, the heightened drama situations they just feel so real. They just feel so real. Like, well, that's the thing. It just feels real. So you're assuming that because it feels that way, that therefore it is what is best. But it could just be the environment. It could be the roller coasters, the ups and downs that are doing it for you. And you can't assume that it's necessarily best, just because there is an assumption that whatever environment creates the highest emotion is therefore best. That's not necessarily the case. The only way to get to the top of the mountain is you can't exert all your energy at once. You have to find a certain pace, a certain rate of operation so that you can get to the top of the summit. But if you've moralized, the maximum use of energy, the maximum experience of emotion, you're not going to get very far up the mountain, and because you're not going to set a pace that's going to get you there.
Oh yeah. I know I've talked about the safety belt, like the strap in or the bar, that you're kept in, or like the full on harness in these rides. I just kind of think it's funny because it's like, get in here, you're gonna be strapped in with me, and we're gonna go up and down. I'm gonna force you through all my emotional drama, and we're gonna be really close. Yeah, because we're connected. Because that's the other thing. And
it's like a prison belt. Like, get in, you're safe. You're safe. Don't worry, it's a safety belt.
Well, the thing is that you connect over your drama.
Yeah,
right?
That's what people do.
Because it's like you get in that seat, like you're literally right, like next to the person in the little seat. And obviously some of these rides come in 4-person seats or whatever, but let's just take the analogy of you sit into the next to the person, you strap yourself up, you're strapped together, and you go. And the thing is, I think that we all want connectedness. Yes, we all want to be able to connect. We want that deep connection, but we think we can only find it in these hyper high low oscillation of emotions and all of this and I think people feel like, well, we're just being really raw and everything. But what's really raw, when you're really in a position of climbing a mountain, that's when you're really gonna get really real raw. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely. But I think that there can be a feeling of I don't get to feel the connectedness because you're not strapped in right next to me. Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you can go, oh, we're being real. If there's drama, I think, well, then your neuroses and not facing your ego are actually a good thing. Because then there's something that's going to create the drama and the problems if you can be real. But if you take seriously the idea that you need to climb a mountain, then neuroses and egos are things you need to overcome. So it's almost like kind of the subconscious maybe has kind of moralized or convinced us to moralize something where we don't have to face ourselves, and that's an asset to relationships, because then we can, share our neuroses, as opposed to we need to overcome them, and that's something that the roller coaster metaphor contributes to, where you don't want to overcome your neuroses, because then you have sources of drama that are going to help you have a real relationship, where a mountain metaphor puts all the incentive on overcoming the neuroses, or otherwise you're not going to make it to the summit.
That's absolutely right. Suddenly overcoming your neuroses and getting improving yourself,
Yes.
really learning to get better.
Yes. All that's bad.
Oh, absolutely.
All of that
now,
is bad.
now it's like that's a threat to your relationship,
Yes,
Daniel.
that's right.
It's
That's
like
right.
no, don't get over that. That's what was that was what was going to make it fun. You
Yeah,
know,
that's correct.
And it's like, no, the whole point of the thing is to improve and to become better is. It's because you're trying to make the world a better place
Yes.
in the end. And
Yes.
it's like you really want to embark on that and believe it for yourself and for the sake of others
No,
around
I mean,
you.
we've created a moral system in
Yes,
relationships
yes.
following the roller coaster
Yep.
that moralizes everyone keeping their neuroses and living in drama.
But
And
at least it's a ride.
At least it's real, man.
It's a ride.
At least it's fun.
real.
It's a ride, but
Yeah, well, great. Thank you so much.
yeah, and the conversation Michelle did with Sandy and Javier is on Javier's The Dating Theory, his page,
Yes.
and should do more. And
Yeah, we appreciate you guys listening to the elaboration on
roller
mountain and the
coaster,
roller
the
coaster.
mountain and the roller coaster.
Yeah.
This has been OG Rose. For more, please visit ogrose.com, Facebook, Twitter, Anchor, Instagram, YouTube. All likes, subscriptions are greatly appreciated.
We also sometimes have one of those planes that has a little banner at the
Yeah,
back.
at the beach.
So
And
you
if
can
you
look out
see
for
it,
that.
wave. Yeah, just wave. The waving really helps.
We get
and
like one like for every wave.
Yeah, we get one like for every wave, in our hearts. In our hearts. So if you see that plane, please wave at
Please,
it.
dear
We
Lord,
really would
wave.
mean a lot. Ideally, though, from the top of a mountain and not from the top of a roller coaster. Thank you, everyone.